All right, another video in YouTube land. Um, all right, in arguing with libertarians and anarchist capitalists, I find one recurring theme: unfettered individualism. The notion that all restrictions on individual will and ego are a priori tyrannical and a conspiracy against the real people, that is, the rich, who make things work. An increasing burden until, as Ayn Rand put it, Atlas gets tired and shrugs off this global burden. This is the philosophical basis of the supply side system that currently rules the global economy and is taken to social, political, and economic extremes by libertarians. Now, I'm as cranky an individual as anybody who makes YouTube videos. And in fact, to even sound and do these things requires a good deal of crankiness on anybody's part. And this argument may seem a little abstract compared to some of the more concrete issues I've addressed lately, and that arguably have more importance, but this is the ideological basis of so much of the crap that you're seeing playing out on the news channels that I thought it was worth wasting a little more time with. Not only is this a rehashing of social Darwinism and survival of the fittest, of Thomas Hobbes' world of all against all, of the Roman proverb that man is a wolf to man, is patently false. It's bullshit, because a minute's glance at the real world shows this philosophy to be totally opposed to human nature and how human societies function, including the one that these libertarians live in or would want to live in. For all of their fulmination that socialism and collectivism is contrary to the basis of human existence and human nature, they and their philosophies, I would say, are 10 times as phony. Because human nature demands security. Okay? For the individual and the families these individuals create, families that in turn compose the foundation of human society. John Donne's words that no man is an island is reinforced by the taken for granted fact that no one comes into this world by himself and cannot meet his own individual needs without cooperation from others. Those that are in control of the current economic system, they're as well aware of this as any low-wage service worker in a high-rent trailer park. They know that unfettered individualism and risk-taking are starting to go to meeting doctrines to be preached at the poor, but never apply to themselves, just like democracy. Okay? They demand subsidies and bailouts from big government to take the risk out of free enterprise for themselves. They demand deficit defense budgets because the military not only expands the reach of their market share, but also pumps public funds into contractors' private pockets. Okay? They may bitch and moan about unions, but they know collective action is necessary for even the most ruthless competitive individualist to advance his interests. That's why we have the National Association of Manufacturers, the American Medical Association, the National Lawyers Guild, the National Rifle Association. Nothing is wrong with these collective organizations because of the class constituency they serve. Let it serve people at the other end of the social and economic spectrum, then they become evil conspiracies against the state, against democracy, against society, against human welfare, against anything that is good and true. Let them be social agencies of the rich, the well-connected, the powerful, and all of a sudden they are the epitomes of human liberty and necessity. Okay, but in truth, cooperation is more a fact of life and law of nature than competition. Of course, people are competitive, but within reason. $10 an hour for the lottery is different than risking one's home, livelihood, or life in some venture that may never pay off. Sane people don't destroy their own lives, their futures, or those of their children on reckless gambling, but they might destroy those of other people if they can get away with it, and those others are too brainwashed to see it or too suppressed to make effective opposition. This is not a case for turning the world into a big collective farm run by some brooding Stalin at night in a Kremlin office, because that's the kind of world we already have. Thanks to unfettered private tyrannies called corporations, masquerading as private persons with rights, deciding your future and that of your children based only on the criteria of maximizing power and profits. Nor is the answer privatizing the collective farm, breaking it up, putting it under the control of some individual and letting the other individuals just simply starve or scatter to the winds. It's a case for letting the peasants take over the farm, distributing its assets among themselves, putting surpluses in the community bank to cover the social needs of the village as it raises its children. As Hillary Clinton once said, before she became the mistress of the New York City banks, okay? Ironically, this myth of unfettered individualism is a byproduct of the modern state itself, which has assumed these village functions precisely because our communities can no longer operate at such a grassroots level. It's the fairy tale of rich white boys taking their fire protection, law enforcement, legal rights, and private educations for granted, who seem to have no idea where daddy's money really comes from. The useful idiots for the old men in the boardrooms who know all too well how their bread gets buttered. But, precisely because the present economic order is insane, one can only hope that enough people will return the likes of Muammar Walker of Wisconsin and Mubarak Christie of New Jersey to the straitjackets from which they escaped as a first step in restoring human values to the real world and putting white boy libertarians to real work. I don't know if I want to answer this. I can knock at the phone this time of morning. Hello? Joseph Stalin calling from the grave? They still keep your phone line open, like Yevgeny Yevtushenko said, huh? What's that? The peasants need a good famine to be grateful for any bread they get, whether it's got butter or worms. Well, you can rest easy, Comrade Stalin. Governors Walker and Christie have your number on speed dial.